And you thought you'd be able to kick back and enjoy the fourth. No, we're on the move. Let's get going here. Bright and shiny early morning here on July 4th, Independence Day. Happy holidays. Hope you enjoy today. Let's get it started off the right way and get you updated on everything happening across college football in big time recruiting. Leanne Herring's here, of course, to break it all down for us on the move. Leanne, you can join her on the Rebel Walk and also Cat's Wire. And fortunately for us here at the Voice of College Football, typically on Wednesday nights for On the Move. Leanne, how you doing today?
Doing good. Good morning and happy Independence Day. Thanks everyone for joining on what has already been, Mark, an explosive.
Uh-oh. Hopefully, Leanne will be able to jump right back in and leave those comments and questions there in the chat. She has a list of at least, listen to this, we've got commitment previews coming up of 5 elite blue chippers that are announcing today their commitments. In addition to that, we've got a watch party slated for the Texas A&M, and Michigan channels. That's at 3 p.m. Eastern Time with John Turnton, the offensive lineman from North Crowley. Again, from North Crowley, Texas. Mark that down. Watch party, 3 p.m. Eastern Time today. Texas A&M, and Michigan channels. So you won't want to miss that. Leanne, we can't do this show without you. You know that.
Let's try this again. We've had a lot of crazy weather out here. It looks like it's going to be a rainy fourth down here in Texas, and it looks like it's probably going to be a rainy time for you out there in Florida. So hopefully this weather will let us get through the show. But no, Mark, it's been already a pretty prolific couple days leading into a big commitment weekend for the 4th of July. We have plenty of blue chip guys that you guys have heard us talk a lot about that are finally on the move, looking towards their next destination. And July.
Uh-oh. Could be one of those days. Hang with us here. Again, as I was pointing out, we've got a watch party slated for the Texas A&M, and Michigan channels at 3 p.m. Eastern Time that surrounds the commitment announcement of John Turnton, offensive lineman from North Crowley in Texas. We've got commitments coming down today from 5-star offensive tackle Felix Ojo, from 4-star defensive lineman Nolan Wilson, 4-star wide receiver Booby Feaster, also Kaden Finley, who's a 4-star wide receiver, and Braden Fogle, tight end, 4-star. Then we also have on July 5th, coming up on Saturday, 3 more commitment announcements. And then on Sunday, 2 commitment announcements, including a quarterback in Matt Panitasky that Leanne has been tracking for quite some time. And he is out of Cincinnati. 3 times a charm.
Let's get this. 3 times a charm, pulling up my notes again. But again, a big, huge weekend ahead, Mark. Let's break it down. We got a lot of big guys. I think the number one guy that everybody's been talking about, it's been a high commodity market for offensive and defensive linemen. We know coveted 5-star Emmanuel Iheanacho is off the board. One of the top offensive tackles heading to Oregon, but a guy that we've talked a lot about here that I've scouted a lot through this season. Plenty of guys were fighting and battling, none other than 5-star plus offensive tackle out of Lake Ridge here in Mansfield, Texas, Felix Ojo. It's been a long uphill battle. Plenty of programs, including like we see to the right or to the left, depending which way you're looking at. It's been all about the Longhorns from jump to finish. It didn't seem like there was much to worry about for Steve Sarkisian and down in Austin when it was coming to securing. They've been a staple. We know that Ohio State definitely has made a push, but it wouldn't be recruiting season. We've talked a lot about some of those late last minute. And from what we've been hearing in the last 24 hours, Texas is definitely not 100% looking possibly the landing. What we're hearing is that Texas Tech, Felix Ojo has spent time down in Lubbock, and what we're hearing the last 24 hours with some intel here, that Texas Tech has made a very, very late push. So don't be surprised if Felix Ojo does not end up in Austin today, that he ends up down in Lubbock. And I say this, Texas Tech, we know, has been historically on the marker, talking about offensive linemen, but they were really as far as NIL is concerned, they were really one of the first programs, Mark, just nationally, not only in the Big 12, looking to really up and secure offensive linemen and defensive linemen as far as NIL. And I think that's really enticing. Ojo, despite his extremely athletic and elite blue chip skills, there's still a lot of development coming in from the coveted tackle out of Texas. And so again, not that he wouldn't be a staple in that Texas Longhorn offense. They would be more than welcome to keep him and develop him. But I think Ojo really is looking for a place where he can really concentrate, really develop and hone in on those skills and finesse, but also don't be surprised with the NIL deal that the Red Raiders could possibly pull. Like I said, they're one of those programs that's really taking care of offensive and defensive linemen since NIL really started to emerge. And I think that, it wouldn't be a surprise if Felix Ojo, from what we're hearing, is putting on that red and black guns and throwing a guns up when his announcement comes. So again, just to show you, it's been all Texas from start to finish. Of course, we know there was a little bit of rumblings. He kind of threw a curveball when he took that last official visit to go visit the Utah Utes, but it seems that Texas Tech has really moved in silence in his recruitment and has kind of been there in the background, really navigating. And today they really could pull one of the biggest summer coups if they land Felix Ojo, which definitely is not a possibility. So you got no way of kicking off the fireworks if Texas Tech and Joey McGuire land one of not the only elite prospects in the state of Texas, but one of the top elite blue chip players in this 2026 class in Felix Ojo. So it definitely will be a recruitment to the finish, but it is not all one and done for the Texas Longhorns just yet.
All right, Texas Tech, the Red Raiders out of Lubbock in the middle of nowhere, playing with the big boys and possibly pulling out a coup there. Quite interesting. Four-star defensive lineman Nolan Wilson out of Mississippi will make his commitment announcement sometime today.
Now, Lane Kiffin, Randall Joyner, Coach Golding have really wanted to have been made it a priority in this 2026 class to keep top in-state talent right there in Picayune Memorial. Defensive linemen, we know that the Rebels and plenty of other teams have been hungry and thirsty to continue their top prowess in that SEC defense. But unfortunately, I think that this is one that the Rebels are going to not be able to keep in their backyard. Alabama, the Crimson Tide has been with Nolan. I think this is one where consistency and long relationships. The Tide were the first ones to offer him when no one was really looking at Nolan Wilson, and then he slowly, like many of these kids, they get their moment, as we talk about, and their recruitment really revs up. So unfortunately, I think after several visits and relationships that are built down in Tuscaloosa, Ole Miss and Miami are the two teams that have still continued to recruit him. I think it will be down to Alabama and Ole Miss. Again, Ole Miss will not stop recruiting him, especially because he's an in-state kid, and they've just really made it a priority this season, I believe, to keep a lot of in-state talent. And Mississippi, when it comes just to overall talent that they've been producing, have really been a national buzz on the recruiting scene. But I think this one, unfortunately, is going to be a loss for the Ole Miss Rebels. And I think that, like I said, the consistency and long relationships the Crimson Tide have built with Picayune Memorial High School standout defensive lineman Nolan Wilson is going to prevail today. So I see him verbally committing to the Tide later today.
Leanne, we've been talking about Booby Feaster for a long, long time on this show. And why not? He's one of the dynamic backs in high school football. And of course, he is still out there to be snatched up. And we will see what his commitment looks like later today.
This is a talented kid. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time down in DeSoto, Texas, watching this kid, just ability, his craft. When you look at him on paper, he really does translate. I know that, as the rankings have come out, if you look at him on paper, that he might not necessarily get the ranking he deserves, but that's definitely motivated Booby Feaster. There was plenty of schools in the mix. Now, if you would have asked me a couple weeks ago if it would have been down to what I think will be these two schools, I probably wouldn't have won that bet. It seemed early on that, of course, Texas and, of course, LSU have had all the juice in this recruitment. Booby having been a Louisiana native and then eventually transferring to Texas and to DeSoto to develop. This is another kid who was originally in that 2027 class, but decided to reclassify, which really just changed the game for his recruitment. But it looks like it's down to Lincoln Riley out in USC, and of course Mike Elko, Texas A&M, have made a battle, a push. I could probably talk myself into both these teams just because the relationships, the momentum heading into this one. Um, I thought that Texas, like I said, a Texas school was going to have the momentum in this one. I think that this will be a recruitment. I've said it time and time again, just because of the talent and just what you will get out of Booby Feaster wherever he will go. Despite what he announces today, I think that whatever team does not come out today verbally in this commitment, it's going to continue to be one of those races until December. Even if it gets like I said, pulled out today. But I will say that as much as I think that Booby Feaster would like to head out to Cali, develop under Lincoln Riley, get out of Texas and USC, I really like what Texas A&M has done here. They're building a strong class in this 2026 class, but the arsenal of wide receivers that Booby Feaster would be joining at Texas A&M, I think, are really where it's at. So I think they've really made the late push. I like where they're going into this recruitment after visits, after talking, hearing from their camp. So it's going to be a heated battle. Even if USC doesn't win out today, I still believe they will continue to recruit. I still believe that LSU and Texas will still continue to recruit as well, even though those aren't the two top names anymore. That regardless, but I like where Mike Elko and Texas A&M head today for Booby Feaster for a verbal commitment. I see him in College Station. I see him staying home. I think is despite even him wanting to go branch out and head out of state, I think he's also very loyal to the state of Texas and his development. And I think that they can do that down in College Station for him. So I think it's going to be another big weekend down in College Station, and Booby Feaster heads to College Station for now.
Big weekend for all of Texas, both the big Texas schools and then also the big Texas schools, meaning the big Texas high schools, supplying much of this talent as usual. And I got to admit, I don't know where Aledo, Texas is, but I'm guessing a lot of people don't know where Aledo, Texas is. But Kaden Finley may do something about that and become a star. And he is going to make his decision known today.
Leto Finley, right out there in that DFW suburbs, producing talent, one of the top high school Texas, programs in Texas. A lot of wide receiver, a lot of top offensive guys that come under the radar, that come out of there, turn to be big products. A big recruitment ground for the University of Texas. Kaden Finley, Texas legacy. Texas was really pushing for them, but unfortunately, I don't think that they're going to be able to keep the Lone Star State playmaker at home. I think he really wants to write his own story, and I think he's going to be heading down to South Bend. I really like overall what Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman have done. I think that the opportunity that presents himself down and for Finley, from what we're hearing just over the entire process, I think that first of all, that Texas versus Notre Dame in this one, why I see Notre Dame, edging out in his verbal commitment later today, is that Notre Dame is in need for a wide receiver and building a strong wide receivers core. And they really are lining themselves up to gain a wide receiver, three guys that they're looking at wide receiver, all of who are expected to announce this weekend. And Kaden Finley is one of that. So I think, first of all, Texas versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame wins hands out there because they need it there, an immediate need to fill this position, and Kaden Finley fits the well. And I think just the momentum surrounding the Irish heading into this this upcoming season, and the way that they're playing. And you talk about the culture and whatnot, how it's really played an impact. And I think, you know, the overall culture surrounding the way Marcus Freeman has really taken this team and the direction and how he's recruiting from a lot of kids, especially a lot of these Texas kids that have really been looking at Notre Dame. They talk about just, how he is and, just that excitement to want to get to play in what they're doing down in South Bend. So I really think that he goes and he writes his story. I know that Texas will continue to push. You never want to lose a legacy recruit, especially in an in-state talent and a talent like Kaden Finley. But I think that the Irish are in it for the long haul, and I think it pays off later today.
All right, Leanne, why don't we stay at the wide receiver position? And we've got one here that I'm noticing a bit of a trend that doesn't sound too good for Ole Miss fans, where Lane Kiffin is right there. He is right there on so many commits and so many top talented players, and he's just missing out. But maybe his luck's going to change with Xavier McDonald.
Xavier McDonald, a kid right there in the backyard here in the SIP. We talk you've on the Ole Miss show, and just when we've had blurbs, Ole Miss has really been on under the radar when it comes to producing overall talent. But nationally, there have been some really elite wide receivers, Mark, overall coming out of the SIP in this 2026 class. And Xavier McDonald is one of those. Top wide receiver in the class, top 10 wide receiver on the composite there, top 5 player in the state of Mississippi. You've had the opportunity. This is a guy that Ole Miss has been hoping and praying for. Like you said, they've been right in the thick of it, but a lot of missed opportunities, a familiar phrase that we used throughout last season. But again, Lane Kiffin and his staff, no fear. They always have something in the back burner. While LSU and fellow SEC Tennessee Vols have been knocking and lurking, it's been a long battle. I think today that Lane Kiffin, George McDonald, and that offensive staff are going to have something to be excited about. Ole Miss has had a great week as far as inking J.C. Anderson, a top tight end. Yesterday bringing in an in-state guy on that cornerback in Iverson McCoy. So it's been another strong week as far as filling that 2026 class. And I think that they're going to be even more excited later today, keeping one of the guys they've really battled for at home in Xavier McDonald. Like I said, I think that LSU and Tennessee have been in the thick of it, but I think that Lane Kiffin has done enough along with his staff. I really like that where they've put him, and I think that that's exuded with Xavier McDonald. I think the feeling's been mutual. I think he's really seeing that despite many wide receivers, and Ole Miss had their pick of a lot, but like you said, Mark, just did not close those deals. But I think that Xavier McDonald has felt loved and wanted, and most of all, a priority. I've talked a lot about it early on when Lane Kiffin got here. There was always been a lot of talent in Mississippi, but it hasn't always been the focal point and priority as far as recruiting at the high school level. I think that that's really changed from last year to this year. I think that they've really seen just what it's done to be able to recruit. And like I said, the receivers coming out of the state of Mississippi. We've talked about Tristan Keys. We've talked about Xavier McDonald, and there is a loaded talent down in the SIP. And I think today, Lane Kiffin finally gets another top wide receiver that he can continue to develop, not just for the college level, but more importantly for the NFL level. And I think even though LSU and Tennessee have been in the hunt, I feel more than 95% that he's going to remain in state and become an Ole Miss Rebel later today.
All right. This Braden Fogle is got a fan right here in Mark Rogers immediately. And I knew nothing about him about 2 seconds ago, but I'll say this about him. I see that he comes from Lexington High School there close to Mansfield. And that was one of the very first high school football games I ever called right out of college for good old WNCO. So Lexington High School, Braden Fogle, you got a fan here.
And this recruiting cycle, we've really seen a lot of emergence when it comes to the tight end, when it comes to the quarterback position, that SEC schools especially have been going into that Midwest territory and getting a lot of multi-sport players. And this is another recruitment where the dominoes fall. And the team that I like here, we knew that when Mark Bowman was a top guy as far as Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs when it came into that tight end position, Mark. But unfortunately, when those dominoes fell and they lost him and he went it up to down to USC, that I think everything transitioned and it really paved the way for Braden Fogle to be that guy for Georgia, and it changed the game. We know that LSU and Penn State have been high on his radar, but I think that between Todd Hartley and Kirby Smart and the late push, and like I said, that domino falling of Mark Bowman going to USC really has put in a good and strong path. I like Braden Fogle to be a Georgia Bulldog later today. I think that, again, LSU, Penn State, especially Penn State, will continue to recruit a multiplayer athlete. I've been reading a lot about these Midwestern kids, not that there aren't kids in the South, but I think from what I've been in this recruiting class, these Midwest kids, I mean, they're not only, doing things on that football field, but on the basketball field, on the baseball field. And man, it's really showing their athleticism. But I really like Braden Fogle heading down to Athens, becoming a Georgia Bulldog. I think now the momentum has shifted. And again, we know, and I think it's really hard when you talk about positions historically. We know what Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs have been able to do as far as how they utilize a tight end, but more importantly, how they develop a tight end. And I think those are two key factors. I think if you're a tight end anywhere in this country, and you have the opportunity to go down to Athens and play for Kirby Smart, it's a rarity that you're going to say no. And I really think now with Mark Bowman, solidifying his commitment to USC, that this is really the opportunity for Braden Fogle to go down there to a school that he's been really high up on. So again, I think just the track record, what they can do for him, and how he's become the priority for them. I really like Braden Fogle to be a Georgia Bulldog later today.
Yeah, Huddle's killing me with these basketball highlights. So I've pulled these up a few times, not knowing what sport it was going to be, and then people are probably out there watching, thinking, "Why is Mark pulling up these basketball highlights? Number one, number two, why is he leaving them on there for so long?" Well, you got to realize I'm working in like 6 or 7 different windows, and I don't even see what's on the screen until like 20 or 30 seconds later. So just bear with me a little bit, especially since a couple times they actually had tight end highlights listed on the reel, but it turned out to be basketball highlights. So those are all the commits, everyone, that are coming down today that Leanne outlined for us. But we also want to let you know that coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern time, we've got a watch party on the Texas A&M, and Michigan channels. John Turntine, offensive lineman out of North Crowley, Texas, making his announcement. And again, it appears to be down to Texas A&M, and Michigan. You can catch that watch party right here at the Voice of College Football on those 3 channels at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And while we're at it, our buddy Adam is checking in. Adam, happy 4th. Happy Independence Day. Good to see you. Mark and Leanne, happy 4th of July. Mark at the Aller 4th of July picnic. I think Adam's playing off of my big spiel from the other day. I was going through the Drew Aller family picnic and how many interceptions he was going to throw to Uncle Jim and Aunt Jane and everybody else. But Drew Aller will throw an interception to out-of-shape Uncle Jim 38 seconds into the game. How good do you think? Then we just take it in a complete opposite direction. How good do you think LSU will be? Well, I will say this. We had Steve Dace on yesterday, and we were running through LSU. He's not as high on LSU as a lot of the national pundits are. Lindy's has them in the top 5 of the nation. Garrett Nussmeier needs to cut back on his interceptions, although he's an exceptional quarterback. No returning starters along the offensive line is something to keep in mind for LSU. And again, another difficult schedule. So I had them originally slated for 10-2. We will see what my final call is.
And I think too, going back to LSU, I think that that's why we've seen such a heavy push, obviously, in this recruiting class. And I think that there's been a big investment down the road. Should it not pan out for the Bayou Bengals, I think that Brian Kelly and that whole crew have decided that, it's time to look for the long haul. So if things don't go this way, they're putting a pretty dynamic class. Now I know that's not a fix for the current situation, but again, I think LSU, just to that point, we really can't see a lot of these teams until those first couple preseason games. That's how I treat it, because we didn't get much obviously out of spring ball. We're not going to get much action to really see, and even in then, I don't like to measure spring ball or spring practices, because that's when I look at it as your positions are going against their team, their brothers. Your brother ain't going to hit you the same way that Alabama's going to hit you across those lines. I think it's a lot different play when you're doing practices and you can get reps. And again, I think in game situations, I'm all about game situations, live reps. I think that's really where you can see what kids are going to translate down the thing. So I think we really, that's the thing about rankings. They're fun. They're great, but I feel like until you really see the live action for the team that is LSU now, because like you said, Mark, not returning any starters, and really thin at some of the areas, it's going to be really difficult to get over that hump going into the SEC play. And like you said, that schedule that the Bayou Bengals and Brian Kelly have on the road and at home, even as electric as that Death Valley atmosphere is to play in, it's going to be a tough one for Brian Kelly to make that stretch with being thin at some of these places, even recruiting at the transfer portal and whatnot. So yeah, definitely going to be an interesting year for the Bayou Bengals heading into action. And 8 Saturdays, 7 Saturdays, right there. We're almost to the home stretch.
And 5 consecutive losses in the opener, and they've got to go to the other Death Valley in Clemson to start the season. So they don't ease into things again this season. It's been Florida State, USC as a matchup, and now it's Clemson. And before we look at the commitments coming up on Saturday, we want to remind you that we have made a big emphasis here at the Voice of College Football to focus on recruiting, because we know that's the lifeblood of college football, always will be, continues to be despite the transfer portal. And so we are emphasizing for all of our hosts to cover recruiting, but right here on the move, you get it top shelf with Leanne, national recruiting analyst here at the Voice of College Football, director of recruiting at the Rebel Walk, taking on some assignments now all over the place with Cat's Wire. She's been a scout and a journalist, and is one of the unique backgrounds in the game, and combining those two as, again, a scout and journalist. And we are fortunate and blessed to have her here, the Voice of College Football.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Mark. Always kind and humbling to be able to, like I said, great. Glad to be here talking recruiting, especially on 4th of July. I don't think there's a better way for me to spend 4th of July than talking recruiting. Like I said, after here, I was telling Mark before we got on, as you guys know, I'm covering the Wildcats for Kentucky, but it's all basketball. So after here, jumping on to watch the FIBU U19 basketball and basketball recruiting, a whole different world. So they're playing out at Switzerland. I sure as heck would like to be out in Switzerland right now watching hoops, but I get to watch it. But no better place than getting to talk football here with Mark and all of you. Like I said, watching, and I think for me these last couple years, just on a personal note, is I've had the opportunity to get to watch some of these kids in live action and watch their careers, so now this is like the culmination. And for me personally, I get to work with some of these kids. You get to be on a journey, and as a lot of even though focusing on the Ole Miss or even Kentucky, when you see any kid, even if they don't choose any of those schools, you're happy to see them get to continue to live out to their dreams. So again, it's an exciting day for a lot of these gentlemen that I've been blessed and have the opportunity to, and I do know where some of them will be going today, but I'm not going to let that cat out of the bag just yet. But again, a great opportunity, and congratulations to all these guys. I know that it's been a long, hard journey. So thank you again for letting us have the opportunity to have insight and get to share your story. So again, big, huge commitment. And believe me, it's not over. We know that this is a different July, Mark, all the way around. This is the first July in recruiting that it's completely a dead period. Of course, we know after those last season, after the first couple of weeks in July, we would have recruits and programs would have another opportunity for some on-campus visits and whatnot, hosting those late summer events. But this is different. So recruiting has definitely changed. It's become, back to text and phones and all that kind of stuff. So definitely a different edge for some of these and it's really shown, how teams like Texas Tech are coming in late to the mix, just how quickly the game can change. And I expect a few surprises going in later, but we still got a few more to hit. So let's get to it.
And just once again, just to reiterate, this is the big reason why we do it right here at the Voice of College Football is that Leanne talks to the players, interviews the players, builds relationships, watches the tape, goes to the camps, goes to the 7-on-7s. It's all firsthand knowledge, evaluation, scouting, and face-to-face direct contact and communication. This isn't regurgitated from message boards and from national recruiting services. So Leanne does it the right way. Therefore, we're blessed to do it the right way here at the Voice of College Football because of Leanne. So before we get to Saturday's run, Adam's back. He's relentless. Here we go. Mark, at the Raiola family gathering, Dylan Raiola will wear a Mahomes jersey. Of course he will. And immediately throw a pick to elderly Aunt Mary, who'll return it for a score. Leanne, what is your prediction for Ole Miss's record?
Well, I'm gonna wait on that one. I'm gonna go look at the schedule. I think I'm gonna see where we end up as far as the depth chart, and then probably right before kickoff, I'll probably give my final analysis. I really think, look, for me, as much as I love analytics, and I know Lane Kiffin and that staff love analytics, I really have to see that first game. I really have to see what we're working with, because you can look at tape, you can say, well, we got these guys coming back and all that kind of stuff, but Ole Miss is in a rebuild year. We got some new transfers in. And for me, watching highlights from minimal practice at spring practice and then what I'll see in this off season really doesn't cut it. So, I rather give a more educated guess. And for me, a more educated guess is seeing live reps, getting to see a little bit where we are in the quarterback situation and just where we are and seeing some players. I kind of think in my head where I'd like us to be, but again, it's about translating. So as much as I would love to give you an on the fly, on the cuff, I also want to give you a substantial thing that I think is going to stick in for me. That's seeing these guys in live reps. So I'll have to wait a little bit to that for that one, but definitely as soon as I feel like comfortable enough where I see where this team is going and not just what we were, in comparison. And looking, like I said, records and numbers are all fine and dandy, but I really think you get a feel for a team is when you get to see what guys are going to be in the mix and how they gel and they mesh in that live action.
Back to it. And Saturday's action includes another wide receiver commit. And this is one Calvin Russell.
Calvin Russell, I mean, we're talking about the emergence of two-way players, multi-sport players, and this is one of those recruitments that has been long and heated and, for one of the top kids. But I think really this is an interesting recruitment because this is a kid who really is looking to play not just football at the next level, but basketball. His mother was a decorated and standout player at the University of Miami, was in the Hall of Fame there. So this is a kid who comes with an athletic background. Of course, he played under Chetty Bridgewater this past season at the historic Miami Northwestern, and we saw what kind of season they had. He's before that, this past season, he's also not only played wide receiver and quarterback. He helped Miami go 20-3 during this last regular season. Again, as far as the basketball program, I mean, helped them get to the regional quarterfinals. When you look at these stats, football wise, he caught 39 passes, 704 yards for 13 touchdowns. He's been a max prep All-American since his sophomore year. Continues that, like I said, when we're talking about him on the hardwood floor. And like I want to talk about his basketball skills, because not only is he looking to play at that next level, both sports, but I think the the skills he has in basketball. I mean, when you look at his numbers, just make him a not so typical wide receiver. But I think that not only translates his coordination, the way he runs his routes in his hands, but also just his level of IQ ability. So for me, in going that, we've talked about his final four are Florida State, Michigan, Syracuse, and Oregon. I think that, all those schools have presented the idea of him being able to play both sports. And again, this is a huge factor for him. He really does want to play at the college level basketball. And I think he's proven that in high school that he can more than handle that. And I think for me, it seems Michigan is leading the way. Michigan, for me, really provides the best situation and the relationship for Calvin Russell. Of course, he also has a strong relationship with Dusty May, who's not only recruited him while he's been at Michigan, but has been recruiting Russell since he was playing basketball at Florida Atlantic, since he was a freshman down there. So again, this is another one why I really think Michigan has a strong pool, because not only has Michigan welcomed him on that football aspect, but of course that relationship, that ability to be able to play for Dusty May, and he's also had a long relationship with him in recruiting on the basketball end. I think this puts Michigan in a really good position to land Calvin Russell. But again, this is a kid out of Miami Northwestern. So the Seminoles are my second choice. I'm kind of 50-50 where he lands today, just because I think that these, from his top four, these are the two schools that really put him in the best situation so he can play college hoops and he can also be on that football field. And what I like about the Noles, again, that's a team that wants to keep that local talent. We talked a lot about what Mike Norvell's done. FSU has been in a hot streak. They've kind of taken a different approach to the recruiting, kind of let the dominoes fall in some of these big recruitments like Calvin Russell, kind of feel it out, and really came to the end of them, kind of really came out of the back, let everybody pitch their thing and come into the close. FSU has been really good in closing some big time playmakers and last minute deals. And again, I think that FSU has had a track record, even though again they may not be the sexiest destination, but for a local kid right in their backyard who wants to play a two-way sport, they've also shown on paper in developing former Knowles wide receiver, Jason Lopez. He's become a standout, a collegiate two-sport star. And again, I think that that's got to be appealing for Calvin Russell. Of course, like I said, his roots are down there in Miami. So I think that Michigan has the momentum, the long relationship with Dusty May, what's going on at Michigan. It's no surprise from NIL. Michigan checks off a lot of the boxes. They put him in the best scenario. But I think if Calvin Russell chooses to stay closer to home, I really like where the Noles stand, because again, the Noles may not be the sexiest destination as far as football right now. But again, they've made it a really strong point as of late to close some strong deals and playmakers. But the Noles have also shown the product of how they've been able to not just develop a strong football player at his position in wide receiver, but also another kid who also plays, and is very talented in another sport for the Noles. So again, they have a proven track record that, hey, come with us, you can develop, you can play two sports, and they're also close to home. So again, I feel like the lean is towards Michigan, but I really think that the Noles could pull out a really strong late closing and keep him at home. So I think it's going to be down to the wire, but I think that Michigan and Florida State are really the two best programs here, for Calvin Russell to land later today, because again, basketball, football are priority. And not that obviously Oregon could put him in that position. NIL, Nike, I mean, that speaks for itself, but I really like where Michigan and Florida State have been throughout the relationships, the longevity. But both those programs have proven, and more so Florida State has proven, that they really can produce a successful two-sport athlete at that collegiate level.
The college football show gets back cranked up on Monday. We come your way Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern time, with great guests and your calls, and usually a big topic or two. Before we get to conference media days, I vow that I'm going to knock out all the predictions. We've got 25 predictions. Well, I'll get those done before the season. So we've got 25 team predictions out there. We've got all-time rankings to get to. And we also are revising all the national championship lists. And so we will get to all of that very soon. And again, Big 12 Media Days is coming our way starting next Tuesday, I believe. And somebody I know is going to be there.
Yeah, we're branching out. I'm leaving SEC country, like I said, at the Voice of College Football, and just, overall recruiting, we're looking to branch out. So kind of jumpstart off there with Big 12 media days, a little bit different type of media days in comparison to SEC. It's over 2 days. So we're going to see a lot of teams Tuesday and Wednesday. I will be working remotely Tuesday, but I will be out there at the Star Frisco, for Wednesday, Houston, Colorado, Texas Tech, some other Big 12 schools really looking to make a push and a jump. So, and then we'll be heading on the road for SEC Media Days, which will be a long week in Atlanta. It's not in Dallas this year. I was a little bummed about that, but always excited to go to Atlanta. And of course, like Mark was saying, he's breaking down all the polls. I feel like this is that time of the season where we do all the preseason polls from the EA Sports coming out with all their breakdowns, college, sports fastest wide receivers, some surprising additions to that. The SEC was really loaded in that. I feel like that's what we're doing right now to count down the time to kick off, is all the preseason polls, the rankings of players. So again, we'll be bringing it here. Recruiting, like I said, even though it's a big weekend in recruiting, there's still going to be a lot. Like I said, July looks a lot different. So a lot of these programs, I know a lot of the coaches taking their vacations, enjoying their July, but again, things have definitely not slowed down by any means, especially now with no in-person visits till late July. But we still got a few guys to talk about heading into this weekend that are on the move, looking to find their final home. Well, maybe not their final home, but at least now until someone comes along and tries to up the ante.
Yeah, a lot of focus, of course, on Texas, Florida, and elsewhere, but let's not sleep on the DMV and one of the best safeties in the country, a 5-star in Jere Edwards.
Jere Edwards, St. Francis Academy, his teammate Edward Baker was one of the top linemen. A lot of people were making late pushes. He ends up at the SEC as a Vol. For me, I think that he could very well be in the SEC as well. Probably not a Tennessee Vol, but this is one of the guys, one of the most coveted edges in this class. I mean, the number 3 guy to come out of Maryland, the number 2 overall safety. I mean, when you watch his film, Mark, this is a kid who's just really a force on the film. He's played a lot of slot receiver. At the slot, I think he just doesn't transform a plays. And he's also been one of the cornerstone players for that St. Francis Academy. For those who don't follow prep football or Maryland football, St. Francis has one of the nation's most elite prep defenses, and he's been a force. I think he just is really good at targeting someone and triggering on that downhill. He's got great speed. I think he brings intensity, and I think he just brings a lot when he tackles. He's just got brutal strength, extremely athletic. He knows how to navigate through the tight gaps, breaking down those offenses. And again, I think he's just a really strong ball carrier. I think he's got a lot of potential. I mean, it's just like watching a chess master navigate through the grid. He's always 2 steps ahead. And I think he's just really good with his fluidity. Another strong guy at the edge. He's really good at mirroring routes when it comes to those wide receivers. Again, I think as he eases in, he's going to be dangerous. Again, this is a kid who's been another, max prep All-American. He's been a key defender, like I said, in that St. Francis Academy defense. They went 8-3. And again, he had 92 tackles, 6 PBUs, and 3 forced fumbles. So again, for those who don't follow St. Francis Academy elite, this is again another elite program producing an elite top defense, and Jere Edwards looking to make his decision. I think that when this really shifted, I think Oregon had a lot of momentum going into one of the most coveted safeties in this class, Mark. But after he made that announcement of canceling the visits, which we talked about, when he broke that, and I think that the momentum shifted down to the SEC, and none other than the Crimson Tide. He went down to Alabama, took in there, and I think that for me, this is the one that is going to be the shoe. And I really I think that this is a no-brainer. There was a lot of programs knocking on the door, still continue, but again, after that Oregon visit got canceled, he heads down to what people have said and he shared has been his dream school. Alabama has been one of those schools that he's just dreamt about having the opportunity to be considered at. And now this is where I think that he lands heading into the spring. He saw, like I said, Clemson was one of those teams. Clemson, being a close by in radius, taking a lot of talent out of that Maryland pool. But I think when it's all said and done, that this is going to be another big recruiting weekend and another big win to build that Alabama defense. And I think it gets stronger later today. And I see Edwards heading down from St. Francis down to Tuscaloosa for the Crimson Tide.
Make sure you're locked in with us here at On the Move at the Voice of College Football. We typically come your way Wednesdays, 8:30 Eastern, so remember that. But subscribe to the channel, keep the bell on for the notifications. That's how you know we're going live. And so that's the key right there. Please turn on the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. Sometimes we've got to switch up the schedule. Leanne's busy. I've got some things going as well. And sometimes we got to switch it up. But typically Wednesdays, 8:30 Eastern time, taking your calls as well. And this is the time to steer the ship, produce the show, call in and tell us what you want to hear in the world of college football and specifically recruiting. Bryce Wright Perry is a 4-star off the edge, very coveted, and another one of those that is going to make their decision known this weekend.
Yeah, this is the kid that would just really caught my eye, like many kids at the Navy All-American Bowl this past December. I had the opportunity to scout him in the present. I mean, this is just he just really is one of the top interior defensive linemen I see. He's just got a really active force, super capable of shooting gaps, generating relentless pressure when it comes to that, not just any target, but more importantly, that quarterback. I think he brings intensity with each play. He really knows how to be a chaos maker. I think as he continues to develop and settle in the zone, I think he's going to be even stronger at that edge. Again, he's just really distinctive, has lively hands when it comes to getting past those blockers. And I think he's going to wreak havoc as he continues to finesse. Again, he's just got really impressive get off speed and just remarkable body control at the edge. So again, this past season for Buford out in Georgia, he went 12-2 to get to those semifinals for the Georgia it's 6A, triple A playoff. So again, Buford, one of the top tier teams. I got to also see him at the beginning of the season. And I will be returning back to Buford to check out their new refurbished multi-million-dollar stadium that looks like something out of a dream as far as high school football stadiums are concerned. But where is he headed? This is one that I was really surprised that Georgia kind of, let kind of go through their ranks. And for me, the two teams that I think really, or three teams possibly that have been in the mix, Clemson, Miami, and as well as the Texas Longhorns have really made a push, have been there consistent from the long haul. But I think that surprisingly, but not unsurprisingly, that it's going to be a big weekend down in College Station, and I think that the Texas A&M Aggies get another top interior defensive lineman on the edge in Bryce Wright Perry. I think that they pull him out of Georgia. I just like I just like where it's been. Now I think Clemson is that second team to watch. I think it's going to be a photo finish. I think this is another recruitment, regardless who wins out in this one, that the team that does lose out will continue to recruit him. I think it's down to Clemson and Texas A&M. But and then again, we've heard also that the Longhorns continue to share their and express their need and want to put him in that he's a top priority. But I think right now that the noise is really settling down in Austin. And I think once again, Mike Elko has a huge weekend, nabbing one of the top edges in the country, top interior defensive lineman in Perry Wright. So I like the Aggies heading into the weekend. Again, he could very well pet Clemson. I think it's a battle. I could see him in both scenarios, but I think after visits, communication, kind of where things stand, I really like the Aggies to win the initial verbal commit this weekend.
Folks, the commitment announcements don't end on Saturday. We're looking ahead to Sunday and more commitment announcements. And this is a quarterback that Leanne keyed me in on because I was unaware of one Mark Panitasky until you certainly scouted him firsthand, got a good look at him, and started to track his progress and where he might be headed. And it might be somewhere familiar to you, possibly.
Well, you got the M right. It's not Mark, it's Matt. But he's right there coming in from Cincinnati down in near the Ohio Gatorade Player of the Year mark, not only in football for baseball. And we've talked a lot about the agony of the woes trying to keep up with the Joneses, especially if you're in the SEC team, a team that has really known that storyline since even before I returned back to the beat, have been the Kentucky Wildcats. We know that they've had a lot of hits taken, but man, talk about a Phoenix, a Wildcat that's risen from the action. It has been all momentum for Mark Stoops and the Kentucky Wildcats June, and it continues through July. While again, this is not an immediate fix for this upcoming season, the quarterback situation at Kentucky has always been a Jekyll and a Hyde. They've had some promising talent, but no one's really ever panned out. But I really think that they've finally found their guy mark in multi-sport athlete, not only looking to play college football, but also college baseball. And I really think that this is why Kentucky has really been able to soar in this recruitment. Right now, I've been watching his film. He's been taking the diamond, is lethal when it comes to getting behind the plate and the bat. And I think this is really why Kentucky has become the front runner for Matt Panitasky out of Archbishop Mueller. This is another kid who's been kind of under the radar, but he was very competitive at the Elite 11, the invite only, we know, for the nation's top quarterbacks, really kind of just coming into his own. And I think Mark Stoops and that staff, along with the baseball staff, have really kind of just joint forces together to get a talented player. We talk a lot about the woes of Kentucky football, but man, when it comes to Kentucky baseball, they've been really impressive over the 9-year tenure of their head coach down there, making several regional runs, winning regional runs. We're really heavy in the postseason play. So again, for a quarterback like him, given the opportunity, I think that's really why the Wildcats have pushed. There's been kind of a back and forth when he's going to make his announcement, but he did announce that he's going to be making it this weekend. And I think as far as all the boxes that he's wanting to do and check off, Kentucky just pretty much is edged. I haven't really heard any buzz, so I think that Kentucky's finally going to win strong here after a strong recruiting surge. We know that they lost their number one player, who was once their only commitment in that 2026 class, and Paducah, Kentucky standout and elite tackle Jarvis Strickland, of course. The biggest blow coming when Vince Moreau decides that he's going to head over and take over director of recruiting and player personnel over in Louisville. A long-standing relationship in that program. It seemed like Kentucky wasn't going to find the light, but again, they've really surged with some key, huge commitments. And not only have they been successful on the recruiting trail, wide receiver coach Ladarmian Washington has been an integral part in going into the state of Texas, and maybe not getting some of the most high profile recruits, but he's definitely made a lot of push in the state of Texas where other SEC programs haven't seemed to be as successful this offseason. So, if I ever was going to make a bet on Kentucky finally landing their guy, I think it happens this weekend. And I think that not only is Kentucky football about to get elevated, but I think, landing the multi-sport. It's very rare to get a state Gatorade player of the year in one sport, much less two sports. Again, have had the opportunity to watch his film in football, and again, been watching his baseball film. So Kentucky basketball I think is about to get a double home run hit in not only scoring a future quarterback, but also probably a pretty damn good player in that Kentucky baseball. So again, I feel like Kentucky has really just set the best scenario for him to continue being a multi-sport athlete. And two, they have, the baseball program there really speaks volumes as far as the SEC on the national circuit. So I really think that Matt Poniatowski becomes the Kentucky Wildcat. And I think that this is really going to set the tone and excitement. Again, this is not going to be a fix for this upcoming class, which is going to have its struggles and its moments. But I think this 2026 class at one time was last in the SEC, only holding one commit, losing their one commit, losing their top recruiting guy, their staple, has really resurged and really found its footing. So again, I think they're really going to Kentucky athletics is going to win big come July 6th, landing, Elite 11 finalist Matt Poniatowski, and baseball standout as well. And of course, double, not one, but two, Ohio Gatorade Player of the Year.
Please like and subscribe. It's an easy thing to do here at the Voice of College Football. It doesn't cost you a penny just that helps the algorithm and keeps us driving forward. Please like the video and subscribe. Disputed National Champions is the book. Don't take my word for it. We've got about 25 reviews on Amazon, and we've got about 100 reviews that have come in here to the Voice of College Football, all positive. So take it from your fellow fan. It's a good order, and give it a shot. The Amazon link's in the description section of this video, or you can just go on Amazon and look up Disputed National Champions. Talking about just flat out production, I'm checking out Braden Robinson with 79 catches, 15 touchdowns, and almost 1,500 yards receiving. So he is highly productive coming out of Red Oak, Texas, wherever that is.
Red Oak, Texas, right there in that TFW area as well. Talk about a team that has also found success in Texas, and it could be a double back to back. We talked about it earlier with Kaden Finley, the Irish going into Texas and looking to get some top talent. We talk about the kind of talent that I get to see and am fortunate to see on a daily basis in all the wide receiver talent. And Braden Robinson is just one of those guys. I think that as far as his rankings on there, he's definitely, when you see him in his production, when he hits the field, a lot more highly regarded than what he's given on that paper. But hey, the Irish don't mind it. The Irish are looking and to get, a slew of receivers. Kaden Finley and Braden Robinson, I believe, could be heading down to South Bend again. Marcus Freeman going down there into Texas, looking to pluck some top talent from some other teams. So again, the Irish working hard to really fill those top spots, and I think two of them this weekend, belong out in Braden Robinson and Kaden Finley. So again, another dynamic slot receiver. You talked about his stats when you see him meticulously dissect. He's a strong route runner. He possesses. He's really shifty when it comes to changing his direction. Again, he's another strong 4-star wide receiver out of Red Oak, Texas. I really, out of all the schools pushing for him, including some of the Texas schools, I really believe, Mark, that Notre Dame and the Irish are going to win big in this 2026 wide receiver room. I think that the Irish have made big plays for this top Texas talent. So I believe that this weekend the Irish win big, not only pulling Kaden Finley, the Texas legacy, out of Texas, but also they round out that receiver room with Braden Robinson, Red Oak, Texas, highly recruited 4-star wide receiver. So I think that there's going to be a lot to celebrate. But I think when it comes to wide receivers, the biggest winner this weekend is going to be down in South Bend, and the luck of the Irish definitely strikes this 4th of July weekend.
All right, Leanne, we know you've got to switch gears in a hurry and get into hoops mode with the FIBA tournament going on. So, folks, a July 4th Independence Day special edition of On the Move. And so if you're just joining us or have at some point joined us during the course of the show, all you got to do is zip back. You can watch the entire show from the start. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Keep in mind, we are here typically on Wednesday nights at 8:30 Eastern. So lock that in. Again, please subscribe, hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, when we have to call an audible. Leanne, good to see you as always. And thank you so much for making time for us today, because we were way behind on all of this and you got us caught up in a hurry with all these commitments. There's like 12 or 14 this weekend.
And there's plenty more on the board. We might even have some surprise commitments. So again, we're looking to take the weekend off, but as Mark always says, if there's a big breaking story, we will be here to break it as far as the recruiting trail. But plenty of commitments heading this week, a lot of fires, a lot of big booms. So thank you guys for joining us, and we will hopefully see you next week unless we got a big breaking story. But again, make sure you like, subscribe, or catch us on, if you can't catch us on the move because you're on the move, make sure to stream us on all your favorite audio platforms. But again, happy Independence Day, and congratulations to all those programs getting some of their top guys today. But it's not over. There's a long way till December, and we'll definitely be here on the move to cover it with you.